Hey everyone, this is Zero Cat here, bringing you another Magic Pioneer video. Today I'm doing a deck tech on Color Eldrazi for you guys. And as always, guys, if you like these videos, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you like this kind of content. Other than that, let's go let's go over this deck. So this deck is surprisingly fine. I think there's some things that I just don't like about it that might be able to change a little bit, but I think overall I think it's fine. So today I'm just gonna go over all the cards in the deck and then talk about what I would change, my thoughts on the deck, how it fits in the current meta, and stuff like that. So let's go over the land base first. The land has 24 decks, all colorless lands. For copies of Blast Zone, I think is actually quite good, and this deck can generate quite a lot of mana. I'll name another artifact card that does it, but I think this card is fine, and it gets rid of a lot of possible, issues that the deck might, encounter. The two copies of Boulder's Enclave, Bonder's Enclave. It's mostly just another colorless source of colorless source, but it's also has an ability that lets you draw a card, and you could do this ability for 3 mana. And if you can only do this if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. You have 4 copies of Wood Vault, self-explanatory. 4 copies of Radiant Fountain. To gain some 2 life. And enters battlefield untapped, which is really good. 4 copies of Scavenger Grounds. It's good graveyard hate, solid card. 2 copies of Waste, which is a little surprising. And 4 copies of, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, Something Void. This card's actually really surprisingly good. The ability to describe 1 and enters the battlefield and just producing mana. Hedron Collar, 3 copies of Hedron Collar. Honestly, I probably would have pushed this up to maybe 4 copies of Hedron Collar, just to see, not just to see, it just feels like it doesn't have that much early game, and I feel like having this consistently on turn 2 is actually really good. 2 copies of Spatial Contortion for removal. It's +3, -3, so you just gotta make sure that the thing that you do pump actually dies. Actually not 2 copies, 4 copies of Spatial Contortion. I have the promo here, didn't realize that. 4 copies of Warping Whale, which is a really great card, has a lot of modes on it. Exile target creature with power or toughness 1 or less is amazing. Counter target sorcery spell, also very good. And the fact that you can also make a Scion to help accelerate you is actually really good too. 4 copies of Matter Shaper. I think this is self-explanatory, but this card's really good. But I am just going to talk about it just because I don't know if you only play Pioneer or if you don't play Modern. But this card, when it dies, you reveal the top card of your library. And when you put that card in the battlefield, if it's a permanent card with mana value 3 or less, otherwise it's just a draw, which isn't bad. Worst case, it's a land that enters the play and help accelerates you. 4 copies of Hedron Archive. I'm not really a big fan of this card. I know it generates you 2 mana just for tapping it, but it didn't feel like that good when I was actually playing with it. But other than that, it's also 2 mana sacrifice it to draw 2 cards. 4 copies of Karn the Great Creator. I'll talk about my sideboard in a second when I get to it. But I think this card self-explanatory. I think this card's really good. 4 copies of Thought-Knot Seer. Basically, it's to exile a card from an opponent's hand, and if it dies, the opponent gets to draw a card. But it's a 4/4 for 4 mana, and this is kind of like the milk and butter, bread and butter of the deck. Forsaken Monument. It's colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. On every type of permanent for colorless mana, you get an additional colorless mana, and whenever you cast a colorless spell, you gain 2 life. With that and everything else the deck is trying to do, you will definitely accelerate aggressively with this. The fact that I think if you're able to play this on turn 4 and on turn 5, you're able to just do everything, you should be pretty much set. I think whenever I play it, I think it's very hard for my opponent, especially if I get to untap it with it and get like 1 or 2 turns. I definitely get the value out of it immediately. The fact that you're gaining a life every time you basically play any of your spells is actually really good. And the fact that everything else is also really, really big, amazing. 5 copies. 4 copies of Rail Smasher, a Trample Haste card, and then whenever it's targeted, the opponent has to discard a card. 2 copies of Ugin the Infinitable. It feels like this card should probably be up 1 more. The fact that all your colorless spells cost actually 2 less is actually really good and really relevant. And +1, you exile top card, and you create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token, and then you get to get the card back. And I think it's really good. Like it works really well for Forsaken Monuments. These are now 4/4s. And the other thing is for target permanent that's 1 or more colors for -3. And then of course you have Ugin. 1 copy of Ugin, which I think is fine. This card is basically your game ender. and then you have 1 copy of Willamog Quicksilver Hunger, also which basically your game under. So I'll quickly talk about the sideboard, and then we can talk about the deck. So there's a lot of 1-ofs, obviously. Hold on, I'm trying to see if this is a little better. Yeah, it's a little better, right? Just so you don't see anything here. So you have Tormod's Crypt for more graveyard hate. More graveyard hate with Lantern of the Lost. I don't know how I specifically feel about this card. It feels like you could probably just play with more Tormod's Crypt, because this costs 1 versus 0. So I was like, if you're gonna just, might as well just have the 1. Like, you're not limited to 1-ofs. Pithing Needle, self-explanatory as well. Shadow Spear. Shadow Spear feels like is really good against the aggro decks because it gives you lifelink and trample. And the fact that permanents also lose extra for indestructible is actually pretty good too as well. 1 copy of the Dampening Spear feels like it should be up 1 more. Weather Runestone, which feels like it's the new like Grafdigger's Cage. It's a little better. The fact that, you know, non-land permanents and graveyards and libraries can't enter the battlefield, so it's just a little bit better than Grafdigger's Cage for the cost of 1 more mana. And it also helps stop Greasefang, which Grafdigger's Cage does not do. Lion Hydra Network for the mid-range decks. Mystic Forge, which I really haven't been able to use. Just doesn't feel as strong as the other cards that you could possibly add to your deck. Golos, I think, is just really fine. The fact that you can actually do this, but I don't think you can actually have all the colors of mana. I think someone was actually talking about possibly playing with an artifact that lets you get all 5 colors of mana. I forgot what it was. I was in one of the comments, but I think that's a really good idea, just so you can get more. You can get some value out of the Golos. Sky Sovereign, Council of Worship, a great, fantastic card. God Pharaoh Statue. I love this card ever since it came out. I loved it in draft or sealed. It's just, it's gross. And 2 copies of Oblivion Sower, which I didn't like in this deck. Just because it didn't feel like I'd never ever played it, and I was just like, oh, when do I play it? You know, it didn't feel as strong as it were like when I played against mid range, like creature-based mid range decks. I'm not sure. It just didn't feel as strong. Meteor Golem, I think, is also self-explanatory, and then Embercool Promised End, which I think is just another powerful game ender card. So overall, I did like this deck. The only problem is with this early game, as it was just really bad. It wasn't consistent. It was just like you needed to get to a certain point so that you can actually go over them, and it just took a while to get to that point. But once I was able to get to that point, you kind of just, you know, took control of the game immediately. And the other thing that I would change is I would add artifact lands in the sideboard. As awesome as Karn is, it would be very nice so that next turn, like if you didn't have that 4th land, you can get it from Karn. So on turn 5, you could pay Forsaken Monument or something, and then go from there. I think that's what I really like to like. That's the one of the changes I would definitely make. Is just put some artifact lands in the sideboard and maybe add some duplicate copies in the sideboard as well. Like, it doesn't hurt to have an extra Dampening Spear. Like, I would just put 1 in the main deck and then 1 in the sideboard. Like, it didn't feel like, you know, 2 of them in there. And there's a lot of cards in the sideboard you can definitely change. It's like there's a lot of game-changing artifacts out there, and I just think that, especially depending on your current meta in your local game store or whatever, I would, you know, try to like add more specific cards and make your, you know, win percentage a lot better. Other than that, I think this deck is really fun. Like I said, I'll definitely go try it out. And as always, guys, and I think that's it for now. So as always, guys, please take care of yourself, love one another out there, and I will see you all next time. Bye for now.